Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Now, if you were thinking about a new laptop and you were wondering about a MacBook Air or even a MacBook Pro, just hold that decision, at least for the next 15 or 20 minutes, because there's a very good chance that you should be buying something that really is little more than half the price instead. Today we're looking at Apple's brand new MacBook Neo, a 13-inch laptop that costs a little over half the price of a MacBook Air, but looks, feels and performs just like Apple's pricier models. And folks, I don't want to spoil the next 15 minutes for you or spoil the review, but if I was buying a new laptop tomorrow, this would be it. That's what we're talking about here. It has a metal body, it is a stiff hinge, it makes it feel way more expensive than its €699 price suggests. Its keyboard is the same high-end type used in a €3,000 MacBook Pro or a maxed out MacBook Air M5. Has a 13-inch display, which is the same quality as some older but still excellent MacBook Air models. It's lightning fast at doing ordinary things like opening tabs, apps, switching between windows, despite having an iPhone chip under the hood rather than Apple's usual M-Class silicon chip. And it uses the same Mac OS interface with all of the same benefits as any other Mac, MacBook Pro, iMac, MacBook Air. Darragh Nolan joins me now today to explore its features, flesh out what all this means. Darragh, I don't usually go overboard for a product, but I actually genuinely think this is going to crush the market.
Yeah, and one thought that came to mind when I was looking at this is if I was buying a laptop for college now, as I was 7 or 8 years ago, it'd be absolute no-brainer. Like, I came in at a PC at this price point at that time, and this just seems like by far a better alternative to that.
Well, here's the thing. If you take Lenovo, Asus, Acer, brands like that who typically play in the €600, €700, €800 price bracket, if you sit any of those laptops down next to this one in front of a college student or a secondary school student, or honestly, I think almost anyone, it's very difficult to pick one of those other laptops or devices over this one. I mean, this, like, it looks and feels and acts like a MacBook Air. MacBook Air, by the way, is the best-selling laptop in the world. It is by far the only laptop model that most people can even name other than a MacBook Pro. I mean, could you name an Asus laptop model, a Lenovo laptop model?
Not an Asus. I know that Lenovo is IdeaPad.
Yeah, I think that was about 7 years ago.
Was it really?
Yeah. But so we're just kind of in a new space. But the big thing about this laptop, €699. I mean, a MacBook Air costs €1,249. That's around the price that we're used to expect to pay for a MacBook Air. You know, €1,000, €1,200, €1,500. This is €699, and there are a few limitations to it, and there's reason that it's €699. One of the main ones is that you can only buy it in two variants. One is a 256 gigabyte model for €699. That is the test model that I've had for the best part of a week. And then there's another one which has 512 gigabytes of storage, and that costs €799. So there's no scaling up to 1 terabyte. Also, this is probably the big one, the big limitation. This has an A18 Pro chip, which is an iPhone chip under the hood. So not Apple's normal M-Class, M1, M2, M3, M4, M5 chip. And it only has 8 gigabytes of RAM. So most laptops that you'll see these days will be, like, 8 gigabytes is considered to be fairly basic, but it really isn't on this computer. So for comparison, I have a 3-year-old MacBook Air, which has 8 gigabytes of RAM as well, and has 256 gigabytes storage. So spec-wise, it's almost the same as this machine, except I paid €1,400 for it, and because it had an M-Class silicon chip under the hood. And I've been comparing the two of them for days, and there's no difference. There's almost no difference between the two. So you're getting an absolutely incredible deal with this laptop. But if you were the type of person who wanted to use it as a media server, you wanted to store thousands and thousands of photos or videos, or to edit multiple 4K videos simultaneously, or you're coding at a pretty high level, this is not going to be the laptop for you. But how many people is that? Like, do you do that?
No, it's very few, really. And I think one thing about the reaction to the MacBook Neo that I found really interesting is the sheer amount of tech bros who feel inclined to just dump all over this. And I think they're misunderstanding that for the vast majority of everyday users, not only is this viable, but it's probably going to become their go-to.
Let me just ask you about that. What are tech bros saying about it? Why are they dumping on it?
Dumping on 8 gigs of RAM. I've seen a lot of people point out that having to come in at the higher price point MacBook Neo, the 512 model, that's the only way that you can get Touch ID on these, which is like, that's a very small thing for the...
Touch
ID is handy, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I will say that my test model was the entry-level one, 699, so no Touch ID. Now, if there is one thing that I did kind of miss on this compared to the MacBook Air that I have, it actually is Touch ID, because it wakes the computer quicker, and you can log in quicker to certain websites and pay for things. But yeah, you're right. That is not a major deal. And you're dumping on a machine that costs $699. I mean, like, this is a computer for everyone. Just to be completely clear into what I was doing with this, just in case you're wondering, am I a normal person or am I, just a light user? I was writing articles, I was editing and filing photos into our system. I was watching Netflix, I was watching other streaming platforms, YouTube. I was posting to social media, browsing websites, often doing lots of that stuff at the same time, multiple tabs open at the same time. By the way, I would be switching between them, sometimes frantically, particularly coming up to deadlines. There was no delay or lag whatsoever. Now, I can't believe that, there's any more than maybe 2 or 3% of people who would be using a laptop for significantly more intensive purposes than that.
There's a lot to be said as well, I think, for how Apple can make these types of specs really go further than they might in your average device that's running Windows as well.
Because they control the whole...
Exactly, yeah. Like the
stack.
Optimization, I think, is really the name of the game for Apple.
Yeah.
And particularly if you're browsing in Safari as well, so you don't have Chrome eating up a lot of that 8 gig.
Well, I was using Safari a lot, but I was also using Chrome. I had no problem. Multiple tabs in Chrome. And Chrome is typically a power-hungry beast. It will eat up more than Safari, but I was doing it here with absolutely no problem. The battery life was spectacular. I mean, it's a little bit shy of a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, but those machines are ridiculous. I mean, you can use them all day and almost all night and on one charge and they'll still go. But I was still getting minimum of 9 or 10 hours on this, on a single charge. Minimum.
Yeah, and I just really think that you're going to be able to take what's inside a MacBook Neo further than if the exact same things were inside a Windows machine, because that optimization just isn't there with Windows. Windows is slow with so many different things, updates and things like that, and as an everyday Windows user, I think it's just become really clunky as well.
And also, like, the thing about this, we haven't even talked about the aesthetics here. So this launches in several different colors. If you want to go and see my review video on independent.ie, go ahead and do that. But the test model I got was, they call it Citrus. It's kind of a greeny yellow. Quite a nice color. You wouldn't think so, but it's quite a nice color. They have another one called Blush, which is basically pink. It used to be called Rose Gold. They have another one which is Indigo, which is blue, and then they've got a silver color. And it's small touches, like the keys, for example, are color coordinated as well to match the color of the all metal body frame. So are the fonts, the accents on the fonts, that kind of stuff. It's fun. It's not just that it's powerful. It's not just that it's unbelievably efficient or durable because of the metal body. This is still going to be going 5-6 years, no problem. It's kind of fun. It brings the joy back into it. You're too young to remember, but I remember the launch of the first iMac in the late 90s. I mean, this was, a color on a desktop computer. Like they were red and they were green and yellow and purple, and it was just sort of fun, you know?
Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for enjoying the tech that you use every day. I'm not an iPhone user. I'm not a Mac user. I'm an everyday Android and PC user. But there's kind of only one thing that's keeping me away from iPhones is that 120 hertz displays were kind of something that you couldn't get unless you got in at a really high price point.
Yeah.
But that's not really the case anymore. So I feel like the next time I change phones, probably going to make that switch, because I just find using Apple products so much more enjoyable. And that's something that I love out of my tech. And then similar thing with a Mac, where it's kind of like, okay, there's not really a price point that I feel comfortable getting in on this app, but this fills that. And the colors as well, like you mentioned, just comparing that to if you look at any other laptop brand and you're thinking it's grey or it's silver or maybe black if you're lucky.
Yeah.
and that's it. And there's like, it's a small thing and it's a purely aesthetic thing, but there's a lot to be said for all of that.
There was only ever one sort of niche that Windows PCs did actually capture, that, you know, for kind of cool and edgy, and that was the gaming community. So, and they still have that. I mean, Apple tries with gaming, but it's, if you're a serious gamer, you still are on a PC, and maybe you're building your own PC. And we had Alienware and we had all of these brands. But other than that, you know, let's be honest, if you're using a Windows PC, there's a very good chance that you're being forced to use it. Your company's forcing you to use it. You're being forced by someone at school who made a decision. Maybe you're using an iPad, maybe you're using a Chromebook. Obviously, they're not PCs, but maybe you're using a cheap Windows laptop. You're doing it because it's handed to you, you know? It's like being handed a soggy sandwich by your parents and told, this is lunchtime. Eat this. It's good for you. It'll do. That's what a PC laptop is. Now you've got something like, you know, a MacBook Neo comes along. It's kind of, it's sweet, it's fruity, and it's good for you. And it's more powerful and nicer than all the rest of the stuff. Like, what are you going to pick? Who in their right mind is going to pick a Lenovo or a HP or an Acer, grey, plastic piece of crap, over something like this? I just can't see it. I could, when compared to a MacBook Air, even though it's a vastly superior machine, but it's €1,300. I can definitely see why you would, no, look, I'm not spending well over $1,000 on something that I only use to browse stuff and do light work, or use Excel, or use Microsoft stuff, or sometimes watch Netflix. But for somebody like that, I mean, I just don't understand why. I think this is going to destroy the mid-market Windows PC scene, other than for corporate installations where you're being forced to use it because the middle-aged guys in the IT support departments, they have licenses, they have contracts, they have certifications, and they're based on Windows-based systems, and therefore that's what they're going to ram down your throat. Yeah,
but that is only a certain section of people, and like you say too, it's kind of it's being forced. So you very well are going to have a lot of people. Like, even for me, like we use mostly HP devices for our work laptops here in the Independent, and a lot of our colleagues in video and audio are actually on Macs from the company, and you're kind of looking across and you're like, oh, I'd love to be on a Mac.
Well, I mean, I use a Mac every day. I mean, the option is there to use a HP, one of the plastic HP laptops, but it's just, I just don't get work done quickly enough on it. So I've used a Mac, whether it's a MacBook or an iPad Pro, most of the time, and I find I get work quicker done on it. I also find it's I find them less problematic as well. But I'm sure there is a case to be made for using HP laptops. I don't know what that is in a creative industry, but you know, I'm sure there is one. There are some other limitations to this, just in case people think that I'm having, you know, the podcast equivalent of a wet dream here, right, about a laptop. Okay, I'll give you some of them. So, the 13-inch screen on it, while it is impressive, the brightness level is lower than you will find on some other laptops. Now, it goes up to 500 nits. That is actually very bright for a laptop screen. You will never, ever have a problem in any indoor environment seeing anything on the screen. You go out in midday sun, it will become a little bit more difficult. So for comparison, the latest MacBook Air and actually the last few MacBook Air models have gone to 1,000 nits. Now, I would almost never take it up that high. I remember during COVID when I was outside, it was an issue because the sun might be shining. You're sitting at home, you're sitting out in the back garden, and you wanted a brighter screen. That's one limitation. Slightly fewer and slightly lower end USB ports, USB-C ports. I actually don't think this is going to be an issue for anyone, but it's worth mentioning. So one USB 3, one USB 2. That means there's no MagSafe charging like you get on the higher end MacBooks. I have a MagSafe port on my MacBook Air, my Mac Pro. I never use it. I always charge using a USB cable like everybody else in the world. If you're connecting to an external display on it, which some people do, especially for work, it will be limited to a 60 hertz display, which is almost all work displays. Rather than a higher end 120 hertz display, which if you were a gamer or if you were into a really strong creative industry and you editing video, editing photos, you might want. Again, that's not something that you or it's not going to impact the work that we do. I highly doubt it will impact anyone other than a handful of people listening to this podcast. And for them, spend a few €100 more, get your MacBook Air, get another type of laptop. As I said, the only thing I did miss was the fingerprint reader, but you actually get that if you pay the extra €100 for the 799. And one other thing to note as well is that MacBooks now sold in Ireland and the EU in general don't have chargers with them. That's a fairly new thing. That's annoying because they do sell them. They do pack the charger in the US. Apple's kind of blaming it on the EU, saying it's a sustainability thing and it's an eco drive within the EU. It may or may not be. It also probably conveniently saves them a few quid.
Saves them a few bob, I'm sure.
Again, on the other hand, how many chargers do you have at home? I'm a bad example. I probably have 30, but I review a lot of stuff for a living.
I'm the worst for if I get a new device, I'll be like, I have to have the charger that it's supposed to ship with, and that's nearly a mental block more than anything.
Yeah.
Trying to get out of the habit.
I'd say most people have probably 2 or 3 at least at home.
Definitely, yeah.
I would say. So this machine, this device is going to do conservatively 95%, conservatively, of what you would expect a full-powered, high-powered MacBook Air, MacBook Pro to do. Like, it really will. There aren't any productivity downsides or compromises to this machine. And it looks, if you like colorful laptops, it looks like $1 million. So I just don't see how Apple doesn't sell a gazillion of these things. The chips in iPhones, Apple develops its own chips. It designs its own chips. It doesn't make them, but it designs them. And they have become so powerful in the last few years. Like the A18 Pro, which was in last year's iPhone, okay, was not even this year's iPhone chip, last year's iPhone. If you run one of those benchmarks online, like Geekbench, for example, it tallies somewhat around the same as an M1 chip from 2021, okay? But that was a very powerful chip. That chip is still, more than enough to run 99% of all of the things that we do today on computers. So what's happened here is that the hardware and the tech under the hood, it has kept upgrading every year, far in excess of what we actually do on our computers, to the point where an iPhone chip, this A18 Pro, is now completely capable of doing the stuff that a laptop needs to do. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you mightn't have said the same thing about an iPhone chip. What I do think this could kick off is companies like Qualcomm with their Snapdragon, their high-end Snapdragon chips. They must be looking at this and thinking, surely we can do a deal with some a PC manufacturer to load one of our high-end mobile chips, because they're really powerful chips as well, for a cut price laptop. The problem there is that there are already cut price Windows laptops, and they run on a lot, and they usually run on full Intel i5 processors. So power is not the issue. There's already plenty of powerful €500, €600 Windows laptops. The problem is that from a user experience, from a design experience, aesthetically, and just booting it up every day and going in and using it, they're mediocre.
Yeah, I think Windows has a lot to answer for in that respect as well. Like the jump from Windows 10 to Windows 11 recently enough, in terms of how the user actually experiences it. I don't think the user experience was taken into account at all when that jump was made from Windows 10 to Windows 11.
See, the problem is for Microsoft, they've such a lock and such dominion in businesses, in boardrooms and in corporate environments, in large organizations. There's little or no incentive for them to think about the kind of things that companies like Apple think about, or even Samsung or Google with Android. Like for those companies, it's really important to consider things like what is a nicer way of getting something done, or a much quicker way of getting something done, and they don't have compromises to make based on some other licensing deals that they've already done on some other corporate deployment, which Microsoft has. So I look at some of the shortcuts on Microsoft laptops, and I mean, why on earth did you do it that way? And think, that's because you don't want to mess up the workflow for all the Citrix users or all the Salesforce users or whatever. And you realize that you're kind of like in the Matrix. You're in a sort of a dull grey morass, black hole of a machine, where what you like and what is interesting and what's pleasing to you is very far down the list of considerations in terms of what functionality will result. Which like, to be fair to Android, to be fair to iOS, and companies like Samsung as well, who have to put skins on Android for Galaxy phones, they have to think about that sort of stuff, and they do a fairly good job. All of those companies in general. And they play off each other, and they add features, and they copy each other's features. All of them, they all copy, but they tend to be good features.
Yeah. No, I'm my everyday phone is a Xiaomi. It's a Xiaomi 14T.
Nice.
And one of the things that they added in one of their recent UI updates that I really appreciated, completely stole it from iOS, was a kind of a version of the dynamic island. And it wasn't something I was familiar with as someone who never really uses an iPhone. And it's obviously not physically built into the device the same way it is on an iPhone, but it's just really handy for those little things.
Alerts, updates, notifications, your Uber is coming or whatever.
It's more aesthetically pleasing to get all of that information in your notifications, and as well for like media playback. If I'm on Spotify, it's just there running all the time. It's got a little waveform, it's got an album art thing. It's just little...
Yeah, I mean, cumulatively, they all spur each other forward. They all steal from each other, but they spur each other forward. And so the result is now, in 2026, you have a bunch of phones which, generally speaking, are, compared to 10 years ago, like really quite user-friendly and quite compelling in an awful lot of ways, which is why everyone has one, which is why everyone spends more time on their phone now than anything else. Meanwhile, PCs, laptops, desktop computers, can you name a single desktop computer?
Oh, no, definitely not. Absolutely not.
And that's the extreme example of corporate Windows-style corporate culture killing creativity, just killing it. Because why bother? Why bother when, you have Q3 and Q4 orders based on, where €10 cheaper is more important than something that makes it easier for an individual worker. So it's interesting. Anyway, look, that we've gone off on quite a tangent. Look, to sum up, this Apple MacBook Neo is I think it's going to be the biggest launch. I think this is the biggest tech launch of the year. I think it's going to sell an absolute ton. I think within 3 or 4 months, you're going to start seeing pink and green and blue laptops all over the place. And I think Apple is on to an absolute winner here. So anyway, that is it for our review for the Apple MacBook Neo. Darragh Nolan was joining me today. Alan Kelly was on sound, and JJ Clark produced. For me, Adrian Weckler, thanks for listening or watching to The Big Tech Show. We'll talk to you soon.